help myself. Okay, so hello again, everyone. I'm looking forward to this breakout room session and having a chat. I just have a short presentation, then I'm hoping we can share questions and experiences. You can come in and out of these sessions if you're curious as to what the other groups are doing too. And if you need help with that, please just mention in the chat. So for the next little while here, we will be talking about site analysis and preparation for green infrastructure projects. My experience in site analysis for green infrastructure is limited to my experience building rain gardens. So in this next slide, you can see one of the most beautiful plants of the Centennial rain garden, this lovely Solomon seal. So today I will be talking more about rain gardens than necessarily any other green infrastructure project, until someone will finally let me build them a green roof. We have a partnership with the DF Market, hopefully, but their expansion on their building is just delayed for now. But it is also interesting, though, that a strawberry plant started growing on their current roof. So I think it would like to green. So I'm looking forward to maybe doing that eventually. But site analysis for green infrastructure projects will have a few similarities. So it is important to consider the amount of water a site will receive at different times of the year, where that water will go, and where you want it to go. Any GI project will also need plant biodiversity to succeed. So next we have our first step, looking at topography. It is important to know the slope, elevations, and proximity to bodies of water for your projects. Rain gardens will not be as effective with a slope over 10 degrees. You can measure this with a clinometer. A clinometer. I can never say it right. I'm so sorry. If you don't have a clinometer, though, there is an app for everything. I use my app on my phone to help me with site assessments for our rain garden projects, as well as some other assessments for our other projects. And it's served me well so far. I have not yet dropped my phone in the water. That's most important. If you have an area you really think could benefit from a rain garden, however, that has a steeper slope, you can always consider building a berm, just for the purpose that the water will be held in the garden and won't run off, which defeats the purpose. You also don't typically want to build gardens on top of mountains. You want to catch the water in low-lying areas that will catch the surface runoff to help it infiltrate into the ground before it reaches streams and other bodies of water. And of course, groundwater reserves. That's so cute, I'm sorry. So next I have some key steps to keep in mind. Assess for permeability of rain, soil type, assess the amount of shade for plant species. I'll just wait for Siddhabi to go to the next slide if you wouldn't mind. Thank you so much. Assess presence of nearby invasive species, as I mentioned before. Make sure to plant the garden about 3 meters, 10 feet from building foundations, sidewalks, and driveways to allow for root growth and to protect the infrastructure. And of course, be safe. Get surveys done for electrical and natural gas lines. I am unfamiliar with other provinces, but for here, we get our surveys done by NB power will come for free, and make sure that you know where the electrical wires are so you don't dig into them. That can be very dangerous. And also you need an Enbridge locate to put any shovel in the ground anywhere in Canada. So make sure you get that so you know that yourself, you're safe, and your volunteers, of course. Next, I like to think of the story of the space. So questions like, what was here before? How was it used in the past few decades? And maybe even further. Does water pool in this area? Where? And when it rains, where does the water go? We are very lucky in our projects to have citizens come stop by when we are working on our rain garden projects in the city. I usually tend to learn the most about an area from a nosy neighbor or a curious passerby. They are bundles of knowledge, and it's always fun to have a chat and tell someone what you're doing and what the benefits of GI projects are, and swap some good old stories. It's been very good for me so far. And next I have a couple pictures of some of my favorite water-loving species, the arrowhead and the blue flag iris. But I like to think of what kind of soil is at the site. You can test this yourself. I don't know if anybody can see me at the moment, maybe not. But anyway, you can do a ribbon test. So you can find instructions for this anywhere on the web. There are a lot of different universities that have different resources as well. So you can ribbon soil to see what kind of soil it is. So if it's clay, if it's silt, loam, or sand, and what the different composition is. So I just have a little example down on the bottom right there. But the method we use is to just take a small bowl of soil, add water, and push it into ribbons with your thumb and forefinger, and see how long you can get it. We also use this technique for wetland assessments. And it's really fun, if you believe me. And what kind of native plant species should you use? You can determine this by asking local nurseries what they have available, what they could have available, making sure they are water-loving species. Any GI project will need species to withhold the stormwater that it will receive. So I do recommend this for any. And making sure that they bloom at interchanging times in the spring, summer, and fall are very important to attract pollinators and different wildlife for the environmental benefits, but also for the benefit of your projects. With pollinators, you're going to have healthier plants and abundances. So next we have another few showcase of native species. I have so many photos of plants on my phone, you probably wouldn't believe me. So I just want to make another case for using native species in your GI projects. They adapt better to your climate. They have been adapting to the climate for thousands of years, if not much longer. They have a higher survival rate because of this. They are a lot less maintenance and come back annually, so you don't need to replace them as often unless they die off for some reasons, like if there are other circumstances in the first year, like a drought or extreme flooding, that they have a very hard time setting their roots and getting positioned, established, sorry. And they're also suited to the soil type that you will find. I still like to use the rain garden soil composition that I mentioned before to get them started, but when the roots grow down further than that, they will be better suited to the soil type that you're working in, and they're usually tolerant to many conditions. The use of exotic and invasive species can not only impact your green infrastructure project, but it can also spread to other natural areas and cause issues there, compromising the water quality and quantity by out competing different native species that are really essential in different habitats like wetlands that you wouldn't consider maybe. And next, I also have a point to mention groundwater and water quantity. While I continue on the benefits of GI and rain gardens, which I could do forever, as I'm sure you're realizing, when you develop and install a GI project, not many people think about the importance of groundwater. And that's okay. It's something that you don't see and something that you might not think of initially. Replenishing groundwater reserves are very important in a water cycle and for our natural environment, wildlife, and for ourselves. This year, the city of Moncton and much of Atlantic Canada experienced severe droughts, putting the quantity and quality of water at risk. Many wells in our local municipalities ran dry for the first time in 40 years. Memram Cook, one of our local municipalities, had so many homeowners seeking to replenish their well reserves because they had no access to water. And the water level in the greater Moncton area reservoir, Turtle Creek, dropped this year for the first time in a long time, and the water temperatures rose, making it high risk to cyanobacteria blooms or blue-green algae that can be toxic to humans and animals. Water is purified by soil when it infiltrates through the ground, making groundwater a quality source of water for aquatic life and human uses. And this will replenish wells and reservoirs. So next, after you go through the important steps and let all of these benefits of GI marinate in your mind, you're ready to find your place. So these are just a few rules of thumb. Again, try not to put GI in areas that pool for more than 48 hours, unless you have a bigger project budget and can use more gray infrastructure to reinforce and give it what it needs to survive and be efficient. Don't plant too close to tree roots, which are already doing a great job at stormwater management. The roots of trees usually don't extend further than their branches, so it's just something to keep in mind. And if you're doing residential projects, small gardens can be placed by downspouts to encourage water runoff from rooftops to slow spread and soak. And I can't mention it enough, safety first. So get your surveys done when you're doing GI projects or digging for anything. If you're putting a sign up, you should also be getting your Enbridge locate anywhere in Canada. And it's always helpful to contact your power company and other providers of services that would have wires running through the ground to make sure that you and your team are safe. So this next slide, I have a bit of something I am not great at, but you know, I've done the motions. So doing the math, it is very helpful to calculate the size of the garden by calculating the amount of stormwater runoff that will be headed to your garden over impervious surfaces like a rooftop, road, or parking lot. So this is just a little sample that shows one way of calculating the size of your garden. This is always unique to this site. This is a good rule to follow and a good process of calculating, since rain gardens should account for about 20 or 30% of the area that's draining into the site that you hope to be putting GI projects. It's also beneficial to use 20% for sandier soils. So this is where knowing the soil type and soil composition is very important as well. So next, I'll touch briefly on my experience with municipal and residential rain gardens. But these are a case-by-case basis. The most important part is the size of these projects and what amount of stormwater you're working with. But next, I have the key differences here. So in my experience, municipal projects will often be working with larger budgets. They'll need bigger equipment. And so we have rented out mini excavators and have worked with the city to have bigger excavators on some of our larger projects. In areas, in especially urban areas, sometimes you can find more compact soil. And also we had one garden placed in an area that used to be a parking lot, and there was a lot of fill in the soil. So it was almost impossible to shovel by hand, which was our initial plan. So we had to add a budget for excavators after, mini excavators, but still, that's where knowing the story of the space is also very beneficial. You will also require more detailed designs for these projects, but there are always exceptions to this. You can have smaller rain gardens or smaller GI projects that can make a difference in an urban area or in a municipality. Residential projects can make an impact on a smaller scale, but I would like to stress not to make a small budget for plant diversity. It will be very important for making sure that the rain garden can still be as effective as possible. And residential projects are fun. Working with homeowners and their vision too, it can be very exciting to share ideas, passions, and design something that they have in mind as well. But this is also a case-by-case basis, since you can have some residential projects at homeowners that have a lot of land and a lot of stormwater issues. So again, just differences in my experience, but this is a case-by-case basis. So next I have, again, the flood map. Depending on what, as I mentioned earlier, knowing your flood map is very important in stormwater management projects. Within these areas, you will need large GI sites to mitigate flood damages and strong buffers to protect existing infrastructure. In floodplains like the one here in the Greater Moncton area, our best buffer against the 1 in 100-year floods are our wetlands and the dike systems and the infrastructure that the city works very hard to maintain and improve. So GI projects can be very useful with this in these areas, but it needs to be done right, and it needs to be done with a larger budget usually. So next I have another picture of my baby, our Centennial rain garden. I really love this garden, guys. But our design for the Centennial rain garden needed to take into consideration the unique challenges of the soil type and the amount of runoff the garden will receive in heavy rainfall events through the 2 culverts that connect on the right there. I don't know if you can see them in this picture, probably not. The overflow pipe in the center of this Centennial rain garden was built to catch deep standing water that the plants will not be capable of absorbing quickly enough in extreme rainfall events or flooding, where the overflow water will drain into the Centennial Pond downhill of this site. So this was an example of a larger GI project that it did require a larger budget. It required a lot more design. It was essential to have the team of engineers working on this. And yeah, so I'm still excited to see it grow, but this is just one case. And next here, I just have a beautiful watercolor picture of a residential rain garden. There are many unique designs you can make for household rain gardens, but again, this can be a case-by-case basis. You can have larger yards, larger stormwater runoff in different areas.
Enter your password.
And but this can be a lot of fun.
2 unheard messages.
So,
5 saved messages. The following 2 messages have not been heard. First unheard message.
You can have different sites where
okay, someone is not on mute, and can I ask you to be muted just so that there is no feedback and background?
It might be. Let me see where it's coming from. Is it? Oh,
Okay.
thank you so much. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah.
So sorry, I will be brief, but residential rain gardens can include different aesthetic, unique qualities like stonescaping, for example. There is one of my partners at the Really Local Harvest has a really good eye for stonescaping, and it can be incredible to have an opportunity to really use your aesthetic muscles, your artistic muscles, and make a rain garden as beautiful as you can. Homeowners will be encouraged, and I find they get really excited to show other people, and this can be a really good outreach technique too. On the next slide, I just have a little example of our step-by-step rain garden pamphlet that we will have on our website by the end of this week. This one was made by my colleague Natayara. It is just a beautiful summary of some of the steps you can take to make your own rain garden or include them into different rain garden projects. And now, equipped with your rain garden and GI knowledge, I have a small activity. So I made this miniature topographic map to share with you all and to give you a chance to tell me on Poll Everywhere where you would build a GI project. I'm going to be honest, my virtual design qualities are not that great, but this is a poorly managed watershed, as I'm sure you can see. The urban area to the right has a large parking lot in a floodplain, a roundabout that no one likes, but is there, very close to the water. A farm with a bungalow and a lake on the left, a residential property on a hill to the bottom left, and what seems to be a nature reserve or park on the bottom right. So this is just something fun. So you can choose the places you would build a GI project on this map, and maybe explain your reasons in the chat or with us if you feel comfortable sharing. Also, if you notice the bottleneck in the river between the farm and the household, it seems this watershed has a causeway blocking the natural flow. So different projects could be rain gardens, green roofs, bioswales, and maybe just we'll have a little chat. Please excuse the artistic content, but thank you to everyone that's taking part so far. And if you notice in the parking lot, to present green energy, I have a little charging station and an electric car because they're really cool.
Brittany, just a heads up, we have around 8 to 10 minutes left, and you might want to keep some time for discussions. So just wanted to give you the heads up.
Yes, I'm open to discussion starting now if anybody has any questions or would like to share their experiences. I'm going to give the floor to everyone else.
Yeah, and if someone wants to unmute themselves and ask any questions or share their experiences, they can do that too. Mark has a question for you in the chat box. He's asking, can you please talk about cost per meter square of a rain garden, residential versus municipal?
Hi, Mark. Thank you for your question. It can be a bit more complicated since GI projects are very site specific. The regular cost per meter square of a rain garden, residential versus municipal, can be very vastly different depending on what the site specifications are. Though I don't have off the top of my head what it would be meter square, I'm happy to have a discussion after this, if that's all right. And I can take a look at some of the numbers that we've worked with to give you a better idea if you're interested.
Perfect. I don't think there are any more questions, so we can continue with the presentation. And oops, okay. Oh, there is a question. In the spring, we have about 3 inches of water. What types of plants, grasses do you suggest?
Yeah, so 3 inches of water, how long does the standing water stay in the area, if you don't mind me asking? If you feel comfortable.
About a week or so.
About a week. I mean, that would be, you would need some very comfortable plants that are very, very comfortable in standing water for a very long time. So a lot of different wetland species. I'd recommend off the top of my head, not native rush, native sedge species would be very helpful there. Different species like irises are very comfortable in living in water for a very long time. And I'm trying to look at my wetland wall here, but I can also give you more recommendations if you'd like to email me at a later date as well. Oh, and ferns, sorry, a lot of ferns. Ostrich fern, sensitive fern, Christmas fern, sword fern. These would be very good species as well here.
Okay, so I don't think there are any more questions. So I'm going to move to the next slide.
Thank you everyone for your participation. These are just recommendations that I had for rain gardens, the flowers in blue, and some green roofs on the rooftops that don't have a very steep slope. So poorly managed urban areas can always be helped, and they need the most help. So I think it would be very beneficial to this poorly managed watershed to have all of these green roofs and rain gardens. Cool. And so if you're interested in learning more about rain gardens, this is just a plug that I really would like to do with this crowd. Jolene and I will actually be developing a course in rain gardens with NBEN and the Raving Project. I highly recommend taking advantage of this resource that will be offered in the winter months. We're going to have a meeting next week and start the process of developing this to offer to everyone. Yes, so the floor is still open. If anybody has anything else they would like to share, experiences or questions.
Yeah, and participants can unmute themselves to have some discussions or share their experiences, or if they have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself at this point.
But also, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for listening to me talk for a very, very long time. I very much appreciate the participation.
Brittany, a quick question for you, practical wise. Are there rain barrels that are fairly inexpensive but work effectively?
Yeah, for sure. I haven't talked about rain harvesting all day. I'm so sorry. I usually do. So for rain barrels and rain catchment systems, I'd say any would be very effective. We use, I can't remember what it is, 50-gallon rain barrels here. We get them from a local company in Dorchester that actually has a process of reusing rain barrels that transport sugary liquid for like pops and stuff. And then he will clean them and work on them to make them work as rain barrels. So we have installed, I think, one station, and we had a grant last year to offer them for a cheaper price to any local communities that was interested in giving them a try. Rain harvesting is a really great way to manage your stormwater and also for water security in droughts and different parts of the year that it is very important to have clean water. For sure, thank you.
What is the name of the company in Dorchester?
Yeah, it's Eco Container Co. They have a Facebook page, but it's Max McNichol. He's very knowledgeable about rain harvesting, and he has a lot of different equipment that you can try and use, and he's full of ideas. He's usually inventing something new. That repurposing plastics is also a great part of his business.
Brittany, I just have a question for you. Do you find that salt tolerant plants are really important? Because at Coast Lashon, we've done rain gardens alongside roads and in parking lots, and we've actually come up with some issues of plants just dying because of the salt running off the road.
Absolutely. So this is a huge issue in any urban rain garden or GI project that I've experienced and also heard about. Salt tolerance is very important, but also almost unavoidable. So just like one example that I can think of off the top of my head, when we were finished the Centennial rain garden, there were concerns that whatever in the parking lot that's adjacent to it, whenever they would have a huge snow amount, they would be plowing into that area, which I quickly reached out to the city and said, no, you're not killing all my plants, please. There are some plants that are more salt tolerant than others for sure, but this is a huge challenge. So sometimes it takes communication with whoever will be doing the snow removal, the salting of the ice on the roads, or where that salt's coming from, to communicate that it can't be, that it will threaten the effectiveness of your GI project to put a lot of salt there, because it will kill all the plants. And I've heard it happen. I've been very lucky not to have it happen so far, but this is something that we're looking at too with the Fundy Biosphere Reserve, a local group here. They have a report on native and introduced tree species, and they've rated the salt tolerance of those in, I can't remember what the report's called right now, Forests of the Future. So I'm hoping to encourage Ben Phillips, the genius behind this report, to do native species and more vegetation, riparian zone, or different GI species, and rate that as well. This is something that I think definitely should be researched for more urban projects. Thanks, Izzy.
I'll just say, Brittany, that was great, all the information you gave. At ACAP, we've done some, excuse me, we've done some rain gardens, and we also love them. So we'll hope to do more. And I just wanted to say, I really like how you mentioned green roofs. I think there's something I'm pretty excited about as well. And we'll keep following the Petitcodiac group and see if you guys can get something like that in Moncton. And maybe eventually we can get something like that in St. John too. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I just want to say that the rain garden that ACAP St. John did, huge fan. Like by your office, I love it.
Yeah, it turned out so good, and it's kind of like what you said, like every day when you look at it, something different was coming up, and yeah, everything you said today was pretty much the same that we followed, so it was perfect.
Cool. Thank you so much. Oh, I also recommend anybody to check out the rain gardens at ACAP.